What's going on, everybody? King of Dragons 5000 here, coming at you with another figure review. Today we'll be having a look at the Hasbro Marvel Legends Ultimate Rider, Professor Xavier. Here we do have Professor Xavier posing out of the packaging. The box was just too big to fit in my display. What we're going to do now is take him off the stand, and then we'll have a closer look at Charles Xavier. So stay tuned, everyone. And so here we have Professor Xavier posing off the stand. Before we have a look at the figure, let's take a look at his accessories. He, of course, does come with his hover chair, which we will have a better look at. It does come in a few pieces, so there is some assembly required. But once you get everything together, it looks really nice, and I am glad they included it. He also does come with a little blanket that does go on his lap. And then, of course, he does come with Cerebro and a psychic effect, which it's not the best effect, but it is included. And then finally, he does come with a little puff of smoke or a little stand that you can have the hover chair on. Although it poses just fine on its own, it doesn't really need the little smoke effect, but it's there if you want it, and it looks really nice. So before we have a look at the figure, let's actually take a look at his hover chair. And so here we have a closer look at Professor Xavier's hover chair or wheelchair, whatever you want to call it. I really do like this little accessory. It is kind of bulky and it's big, but it really does look like the wheelchair that we saw in the 90s, especially if you're a fan of the X-Men animated series. There's a lot of nice little detailing in it, especially right here. There is some texturing on the seat, which I really do like that. And then, of course, we do have the little pad underneath there, so he does have some cushioning. So really glad that they did a good job with this, and I'm glad that there's some color. It's not just gold. I don't know if I would like it if it was just gold. You can see right here on the side there is a little panel right here which is actually painted like a gunmetal color. Same thing on this side. On the bottom we have the little orb where the smoke does come out from, which it's a really nice little accessory. You can just plug it in there and it stands really well, and it does rotate on ratcheting joints. Not really loud ratchets, but they do ratchet. So pretty good little detail right here. Something I do like about this is it has a little feature where the arms actually do slide out. You can slide that panel up, and we actually do get a little bit of a control panel. You can see a little screen, what looks like a communicator, some buttons right here. And to conceal that, you just slide that back in. And then we do get a red button on this side and control panels right here. Maybe this is to control Cerebro, I don't know, but you can see it does have like little buttons on this side. And that does slide in case you don't want to have it displayed. So really loving how this came out. I do like the wheelchair, the hover chair, whatever you want to call it. And it does come with this little blanket accessory that you do put in. And it looks really good when the figure's in it because it's sculpted to have Professor Xavier right here. So if you just have it right here, it doesn't really sit all too well. But that's the hover chair for you guys. Let's actually take a closer look at Professor Xavier. So here we have a closer look at Charles Xavier, and I have to say Mattel did a really good job with the likeness to this character. It's not any particular movie adaptation of Professor X, although it does have a slight likeness to Patrick Stewart. This is more like the 90s era of Professor Xavier, so he has a really big eyebrows, a stern expression. It does look good. Now you will notice that on mine it does seem like he is actually leaning off to one side. That's because he is. His right leg is longer than his left leg. If I position him right, he's standing up, but you can see, because his left leg is shorter than his right leg, he's always going to be at this angle. It's not too big of an issue because I do plan on having him in the hover chair for the rest of his days, but it is something to note that yours might also have that issue. Besides the head sculpt, there's really not much unique about this figure. It's a body mold that we have seen before. We saw that it was with Everett Ross, that it's just a standard Marvel Legends suit body, which it's a good sculpt, don't get me wrong. I like the way it looks on Professor X, and it's just nothing that to get overly excited about. He has a white shirt, which is done really well. Love the tie. The blue and black tie looks really good. going all the way down. You can see he has green sleeves. And then we have an open hand. I'm not really a fan of this hand. I don't know, it looks too diabolical, like he's plotting something evil. He kind of looks like Lex Luthor from this angle. I don't know why they didn't give him a more relaxed hand. And then for his right hand, we do have a little bit of an issue. He only has the hand where he's touching his temple using his powers. We don't get an alternate hand for him, which is a little bit of a bummer because having him displayed, you're left like this, or with his hands down at his waist. So you really don't get too many display options with this Professor Xavier just because his hands are kind of limited. I do say that they did a good job with the paint on his belt. You can see it is done in black and it has silver. The little loops around his belt are painted fair enough. And then we, of course, get to his pants, which continue the green motif. And then we actually do get some brown shoes on Professor X. They're not black. They're actually this really nice shade of brown. So I am glad that they didn't just go all black with his boots or shoes. They actually have some brown to them. And they have a lot of nice little detailing on them. You can see how it has the stitch work going across the toe and then the shoelaces. Now, one thing I did want to joke about is I really hope that his legs were so loose I couldn't get him to stand. That's not really an issue because he has problems standing on his own, and it's partly due to articulation, but also part in fact that one leg is longer than the other, so it does make standing him a little bit of a hassle. It's not too big of a problem because I will have him in the chair most of the time, but it is something to note that because the articulation in the shoes and mine has one leg longer than the other, it does make standing him a little bit of a trick. So what we're going to do now is actually take a little break and get him compared to a few other figures you may have in your collection. And so here we have Professor Xavier posed next to a Marvel Legends Deadpool and a DC Multiverse Superman, and it's really apparent that he is standing off to one side, which I can't really fix it, it's just the way the figure is, but having him standing up straight, you can see he is leaning to one side. Here we have Professor Xavier posed next to a WWE Elite Scale figure and a Mezco 1/12 Collective Popeye the Sailor Man. So with the comparisons out of the way, let's actually take a look at his articulation. Professor Xavier here does have the standard Marvel Legends articulation. His head is on a ball joint, which does work up and down. Doesn't really have much left and right pivot, but it does rotate side to side. It is on a hinge, so he can look up about that far, can look down about that much. Arms on a ball joint go out. They don't really go out that far, yeah, that arm doesn't want to go up any further than that, but I know it can. I don't know why it just doesn't. Rotates all the way around. He has a bicep swivel. Has a double bend in the elbow. Works pretty fine. Has a swivel and hinge in the wrist. No issues there. He does have an ab crunch, which goes back about that far. Forward about that far. He has a swivel in the waist. Legs do go forward to about there. Go back. Out only to about that far. Swivel at the thigh, double bend in the knee, goes back quite a bit. No rotation in the boot, but we do get an ankle hinge which doesn't go forward, hardly goes back, and then forward-facing pin for rocker ankle. So overall, pretty decent articulation on Professor Xavier here. So what we're going to do now is take a little break, get him posed for my final thoughts, and then we'll wrap up this review. And so here we have Professor Xavier posed for my final thoughts. Overall, this is a welcomed addition to my collection. He is one step closer to completing my X-Men display, which I am actually really glad that I do have Professor X in hand. You really can't have the X-Men without the leader, which is Professor X. I know some people say it's Cyclops, but Professor X started the team. Hasbro did a really good job with this figure. Although mine does suffer from having one leg taller than the other, it really doesn't make a difference to me, seeing as how he's just going to be in this chair. Although I do feel the Cerebro effect could have been a little bit better. The cloud of psychic energy doesn't look like a cloud of psychic energy at all. It looks like something else, which I'm not going to get into. But it still looks really, really good without it, so you can have him posed with just the helmet, which is a really good look and something I might opt out to do in my display. If you are looking for Professor Xavier, he is starting to hit stores now, alongside with the Ultimate Riders Deadpool. I was lucky enough to find my Professor X at my local comic book store, so a huge shout out to Asylum Comics for getting this figure out to me so I could review it for you guys. If you do find Professor Xavier out in the wild, he is going to run you about $40 before tax, so he comes out to about $45. He is more online. I have seen people on Amazon and eBay asking $100 for this figure. If you're patient enough to find him in stores, I really do recommend you pick him up, especially if you're a fan of the Jim Lee era X-Men, which I am. You can't have an X-Men display without the classic Professor X in his gold hover chair. With that being said, guys, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, go check out all my other action figure reviews, as well as all my other Marvel Legend videos. Hopefully you find them informative. As always, if there's a figure you would like to see me review, let me know down in the comments, and if it's in my display, I'll definitely take a look at it. And while you're at it, check out my Instagram account for new and exciting action figure photos. And of course, ring that bell notification for all my latest videos. Until next time, guys, I'll see you later. Take care, everyone.